Okay, Jason Robbins of DraftKings, GM. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, let's dive in this way. DraftKings, of course, is the fantasy sports and sports betting company, publicly traded, not necessarily a crypto company. And yet, you and I just ran into each other at the big FTX crypto conference in the Bahamas. And it was fun to see you there. I guess I'd start us off by asking, did you enjoy it? Was that your first crypto conference? And are you now going to be a staple of the crypto conference circuit?
That was my first crypto conference. I did enjoy it. I will probably attend more of them. So lots of interesting things going on. Also, lots of people that come to those conferences that are good to meet with and hear what they're working on, see if there's any potential opportunities to work together. So I thought it was a great conference, and I'll definitely be doing more of them,
Are you now
especially
a
if they're in the Bahamas.
right? Well, Bahamas, yeah. Would you say, Jason, that you're now a crypto guy? Are you into crypto?
I've been into crypto for a while, so personally, and obviously DraftKings has started to, with our NFT marketplace, make some strides in crypto as well. But I've been into crypto for years now.
Jason, I think that's interesting to hear you're in for crypto for a long time. I think most people know you as kind of the sports guy. So, what I like to ask people, what was your first crypto moment? Do you recall the moment when you discovered it or became interested in it?
Well, when I first heard about it was in around 2013, and I wish I had developed more interest in it then because it was there was a lot of upside there that didn't exist later. But I kind of had heard from some friends who were early adopters, and then just as time went on, more and more people were talking about it, and I said, all right, I gotta figure out what's going on here. And at first, it was just let me open a Coinbase account and I'm going to try to buy some Bitcoin, some Ethereum, and then it developed into really just reading up on, blockchain as technology, diving into some other sorts of, altcoins and interesting projects. Around a year and a half ago, I started to become interested in NFTs. That was largely due to my co-founder, Matt, who got into the CryptoPunk craze and convinced me to start looking at it. And in July of last year, I bought my first NFT. It was a CryptoPunk, and I bought a lot of NFTs since then in the next few months, and really love that. It's been a lot of different things, some of which have been, personal interests, some of which have been, well, I guess it's all on some level personal interest, but I've also put more time in some areas because I wanted to learn about it for more of like purposes of applicability to DraftKings. So there's things that like maybe in a different world I would have just like said, hey, there's a lot of smarter people I could just go to and say, what do you think I should do here? But I actually spent the time, as did my co-founders, and still are spending the time really digging in and like doing it and learning it ourselves. And not to make money. I mean, like been able to make a little money, but the amount is not really even justifiable given the amount of time I've spent on it. Much more to learn about it and to see if there's really two vectors of applicability for DraftKings. One is, we don't want to have our eyes closed and get disrupted in any way. So I think any new technology, I want to make sure I understand it well enough to see around the corner and tell if there's potential to get disrupted and make sure we get there first and we're investing in it early enough. A simple analogy to that are all the brick and mortar stores that thought that internet wasn't necessarily a big enough thing until it was too late. And we never want to be that. We always want to make sure that any changing technology or consumer trends or both we're out ahead of. And then, and we have been. We were first, even though we weren't the first to launch a daily fantasy website, we were the first to mobile. We were out ahead of sports betting even before the Supreme Court ruled in favor of striking down PASPA.
Jason, I just want to jump in and ask. Dan's going to take us into what DraftKings is doing, but that Bitcoin you bought back in 2013, did you hold on to it?
Well, I didn't buy it, unfortunately, in 2013. I had heard about it for the first time in 2013. I didn't start buying until I think 2016 or 17. And at that point, it was still relatively cheap, but I also didn't have a whole lot of money then. So I actually ended up doing better from like a pure gain standpoint on the crypto I bought in 2020.
And of course, we have to press you further. I mean, what else have you bought since? You mentioned the CryptoPunk. That's a big purchase. But any other coins? I mean, what's in your bag?
Oh, I have 5 CryptoPunks. I have 2 Bored Apes, 4 Mutant Apes. I have a lot of other stuff that I took a flyer on that tanked, like Cryptodes and stuff like that, but I'm just holding them. I mean, I really don't sell much. I'm, you know, more of like a just buy and hold person. It's a little different than Matt. Matt's kind of always trading in and out of them, and he'll be like, oh, the apes market is high. I'm going to trade out of that and move into CryptoPunks and stuff. Like that's not really what I do. I more just buy and hold. Um, and then I have a number of other projects that I think are interesting, and some of which are, with people that I'm friends with or involved with, such as Gary V. I bought some V friends, things like that. I've a Night Goddess and World of Women that I bought, before it mooned, which was nice. And that's also why I hold. Like some stuff I've held just like did nothing for a while and then just took off. And others went the other way, but overall, I think it's been more upside than downside for me.
Do you find, Jason, and of course we want to get into DraftKings and all the crypto-related things the business is doing, but since we're talking NFTs, you're a good person to ask. Jeff and I have been asking all of the crypto exec guests about their take on the NFT speculative bubble, especially the PFP, the profile picture projects. And you said you have some punks and apes, but you're a great person to ask since you're, not a crypto exec per se. Do you find that a lot of your friends, especially when it comes to, big time sports fans who maybe aren't in crypto, have they asked you about NFTs and have they tried to get you to explain it? Because a lot of people still, and I fully understand it, I don't blame these people. A lot of people, they just kind of can't still wrap their minds around the idea of NFTs. They just can't get past, it's a digital image and someone else could screenshot it even if they don't own it. What do you say to those friends when they ask you about it?
I think that first of all, that can be said of anything. I can get a copy of the Mona Lisa that looks just like the Mona Lisa, but it's not the Mona Lisa. I think that there is value to authenticity, and hopefully that's just not debatable. Everybody can agree with that. So the whole I can screenshot it and, it's not, the same thing, like hopefully everybody understands that. I think underneath that, people are like, I just don't get why that's valuable. Mm-hmm. And what I say to that is, why is a trading card valuable? Why is a piece of art valuable? There's different reasons, but for whatever reason, it appeals to people. The CryptoPunk I have, the first one I bought, I have a picture of it on my wall. I like it. It appeals to me. It's not just, hey, I bought this because I think that it's going to go up in value. It's actually something that I think is cool, and I like it. And I never plan on selling it. So, there's it's personal taste. And there's only 10,000 CryptoPunks. I have a zombie. I think there's only 88 of those. So I'm like, if there's more people that think it's cool and want it than want to sell, then that's where the supply-demand curve lands. If there's more people that, decide, hey, I just bought this because I thought it was going to go up in value, and now the NFT market is, it feels like we're in a little bit of a downturn. But it all comes down to why'd you buy it in the first place? And if you bought it because it's something you want to own and you think it's cool, just like the same reason you'd buy a trading card. And sure, you're also hoping that as a collectible, it gets more and more popular over time and increases in value. But it's not just that. I think the people who are just buying it to, purely make a financial gain, that's not a good reason to do it. It's same thing with art. I wouldn't buy art just because I think it's going to appreciate. Of course, I want it to appreciate if I buy art, but I'm going to buy art I think is cool, that I like. And you may not like the same art, so you may have no concept of why I would think that's a cool painting and I paid what I paid for it. So that's the best way to describe it. Some people just don't want to hear an explanation that makes sense. They've just already convinced themselves that this is all just a big speculative bubble and there's nothing more to it. So sometimes that makes it hard to convince people, but those who are truly open-minded, I think, get what I'm saying when I explain it to
Yeah.
them.
Jason, I've got a related question. I sort of watch the space from a distance. I'm not as versed in pro sports as you and Dan, but I'm astonished at the number of athletes who are out here like endorsing crypto or getting their hands dirty with NFTs and stuff. And what I want to know is how many of these athletes are actually, in it themselves? I mean, I know some of the early ones like the NBA Spencer Dinwiddie and stuff were all in, and Tom Brady obviously has got a company around it, so they know it. But, the other day I saw, my favorite baseball player is Vlad Guerrero. He's doing something with NFTs, and I'm really not sure he knows the damn thing about them. And so how much we see these kind of player and team sort of deals, are they actually involved, or is it just the agents going, hey, sign this, you'll make some more money? So at the level of athletes and teams, what is the knowledge there, do you think?
You know, you're right. It varies. There are athletes and that absolutely are just like, some agents come into them and saying, "Hey, I can make you some extra money," and they're like, "I like money," and that's as far as it goes. And then there's others that are really into it, and then there's some that are in between. So it varies for sure. Um, we definitely care a lot about making sure that people who buy NFTs on the platform feel like they're getting value. And I think where the market's going, there needs to be increasingly more utility. It's not just a collectible anymore, at least for a lot of people. It's going to become that. Some people, I think it's just a collectible, but other people are expecting more. Um, and so I think it's going to become increasingly important to have engagement. I think it's different when it's just a collectible. Vlad Guerrero, to use your example, and I don't know how engaged or not engaged he is, but if he's just thinking of it as like a trading card, like, okay, how engaged does he have to be? They make a trading card, people buy it, packs, whatever. Um, if, it's something where the buyer expects to have some sort of unique connection to something in his world, then that's different. So I think that it's becoming maybe more important is the wrong word, but like more valuable to have engagement from the actual, athlete or whoever the subject of the content is, for sure.
And Jason, I mean, that's a great segue to talk about DraftKings and Autograph. So before we talk about, Autograph NFTs being sold on DraftKings, just talk about you being involved personally, because this is, of course, we're talking about Tom Brady's NFT platform, which is called Autograph, for listeners who don't know. And when they first announced, they had a slew of impressive names, Eddie Q from Apple, executives from Spotify, and you and your two DraftKings co-founders as advisors to the board. And that was more of just a personal thing. And then, of course, it became an official deal with DraftKings. But talk to us about when that was launched. I mean, how involved were you? What has being an advisor to it really meant day to day? And what's Autograph up to that differentiates itself from the other NFT platforms out there?
Well, Autograph was started by Tom Brady, who we have a great relationship with, as well as Richard Rosenblatt, those two co-founders. Richard is an advisor to DraftKings and has previously served on the board. So we know the people involved very well. And we think that, just like any company, great people are going to put any new startup, any new company in a chance to succeed, in a position to succeed more than people that don't care or aren't great. And so I think having, those two involved gives their Autograph a really great chance to build something special. And, just like any company that's new, they're still growing and learning too. So what was great about the partnership was we were able to, help each other. They were at a time where we had, we felt like we didn't have the content factory. They were able to create the content factory. We were the platform and are the platform. So we have, customers, we have technology, we have, payments and other sorts of things, and we're continuing to add and build more features. And, that's really, I think, why it worked and has been working. And now what we're trying to do is take all the experiences that we've had with Autograph and both help them get through data and other interesting things we can share smarter about what types of content their customers are responding to, as well as figure out a roadmap for us to add other content. We've added more partners recently. We've also released some of our own content that is tied directly to utility in our game, in our sports betting and fantasy products. So think you own an NFT, you get special, odds and things like that. And then we also have announced some deals, like our deal with the NFL Players Association, where we're going to be creating NFT-based fantasy football games. So there's a lot we're doing there, and autographs a big part of that. And I think autographs, specific area that I think they are working to continue to do more and more in is in the sort of digital collectibles realm. They are also finding ways to add utility, which is good. And then there's other things like I mentioned the NFLPA deal, which is totally different. That's fantasy games using NFTs. So I think that's the way we kind of think about the ecosystem, and it's such a fast evolving place, right? Like who knows where the biggest markets and the biggest pockets of value are going to be created? Is it in game-based, NFTs, play to earn? Is it in purely collectible or profile picture type projects? It's so early and it's changing so quickly that we're just trying to kind of make sure we have best of breed partners, and then in some cases doing it ourselves in each of those pockets, so that we can kind of let the data tell us what customers are finding most enjoyable and where we want to triple down and where we want to make some changes.
Jason, I'm curious, when it comes to fantasy leagues, I've been in, one or two over the years, but what is the role of crypto in that? For some of the other realms, I can see it, but what is to what degree are fantasy leagues using crypto, and how and why?
So the idea is that it's a very similar game to what traditional fantasy sports would be, but to play certain players, you have to own their NFTs, and then there's varying forms of those. So, common cards all the way up through, rarer versions of cards that have different benefits that they bring to the person playing them in the game. A lot of it is just taking two things that people like, fantasy and games and games of skill, and mixing it with NFTs and collectibles, which is something that there's actually a lot of overlap in. Part of why we got into this space to begin with is we had done some survey research and found that there was quite a bit of overlap between NFT early adopters and people that were on our platform playing our fantasy games and betting and stuff already. So it's really just taking two things that we know people like, and putting them together, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, and to piggyback off Jeff's question, I mean, the real specific question that I think a lot of people have, Jason, is at what point DraftKings might transact in crypto. And you guys have a couple times offered NFTs as prizes for fantasy contests. We wrote that up. That was interesting. But I feel like the inevitable next step is, your entry fees into contests could be placed in Dogecoin.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, certainly people want it. It's an evolving regulatory picture, so different products in different states might be, more likely to be doable earlier, and some may be out of our control. We can't do right away. But you're starting to see some momentum there. There've been a couple of states that have said, "Hey, you can do this for sports betting." Certainly within the marketplace, we should be able to do that. So we're working towards it, and we want to make sure. I mean, one of the things that's important to us is, as there's still, crypto is still a little bit of an evolving space, and there's protections that people don't necessarily have in the crypto space that we think are important, and that we feel like in order to introduce something like that to our platform, we need to go a little bit beyond maybe where some others in the market have gone, because there's an expectation, from our customer that we do so. So I think there's a little bit more of a lift for us because of that, but it's not something we don't think we can do, and we're just trying to kind of figure out when and how the best approach would be.
Yeah, Jason, your comments about integrating crypto for payments reminds me that the crypto industry, of course, has had a hell of a time with Washington D.C. regulators all over their back and a lot of frustration. But who else has had that experience? I think the sports gaming industry. You ran that gauntlet before the crypto industry did. So and came out safe on the other side with a big assist from the Supreme Court. But tell me what you see in terms of Washington D.C. and regulators. Is it going to get worse before it gets better? Are you interacting with them? What advice do you have for the crypto industry in dealing with DC?
I've definitely watched it. We're not really actively participating in it, and the reason is it's not our place to do so. I think we're obviously a stakeholder, but to position ourselves as like a leader in the crypto space would be wouldn't be right, wouldn't be genuine. So we're letting companies like Coinbase and FTX and others, really lead the charge there because that's their business. And what we're trying to do is, if asked, obviously happy to offer advice and to, you know, refer people to others who've been helpful to us along the way. I do think there's a lot of parallels. You're right, and I think that hopefully, because as both the business side, but also just as a consumer and as a person, I want to see crypto do well. I don't want to see the government destroy it. Or maybe destroy is too strong a word, but I don't want to see it get treated in a way that makes it so that a lot of the things that blockchain and crypto could eventually help solve in the world are not able to be solved because of restrictions put in place. Wherever we can be helpful, offering any sort of, for what it's worth, any sort of experiences that we've had and any things we've learned from that, we're always happy to. And there have been some in the space that have taken us up on that and asked. And so that's something that we're always happy to do, but it's also different too. I mean, there are some ways that are just kind of like standard best practices in how you deal with regulators and things like that. And then there's other things that are very specific to their space that are going to play out differently. One example of that is for us, it was much more state by state. For crypto, it seems to be more federal. That's a key difference. Now that could change, but as of now, that seems to be where it is.
That's interesting you say that because, as Jeff said, you've kind of already been through the regulatory ringer, and specifically another parallel between what you guys went through, the DFS, daily fantasy sports industry in 2015, 2016, 2017, and what crypto's been through is that in both cases, New York State has been a real standout and a thorn. I mean, for you guys, it was the former attorney general there. And just in our last episode, we had Jesse Powell, the CEO of Kraken, which is one of the earliest Bitcoin exchanges. And they famously were the first company that way back in 2015, so actually right around when you were going through it too, they responded to New York's BIT license, which was the new crypto regulatory framework at the time. They said, well, that's it. We'll just leave New York. We won't do business in New York. And so we were talking to Jesse about that. I mean, any kind of comments specific to New York and why it always seems to be New York that's the toughest to new technologies?
I mean, I don't know if I would say that. I think New York's a big state with a lot of, Wall Street's there. There's a lot of New York is the center of a lot of things in our country and, really in the world. I think the result is sometimes the state plays an outsized role relative to what maybe, a state, other states might play. But, I think New York is also a place that gets finance, that gets, the needs that some of, blockchain can solve. So I'm hopeful that it gets to a good place. But, we've learned this too. Sometimes the way you get there isn't always pretty. But I think the end outcomes, as long as those are the right outcomes, then I think it's okay. And you try to do the best you can not to, have as damage done, but sometimes it's out of control. It's out of your control. So, we learned early on, just cooperate with regulators. Just, don't try to fight it. Just be a part of the process and do the best you can to explain it. And most of the time, they want to get it right, so they'll listen. And it's just about engaging in the right way.
Yeah, Jason, we're talking about sort of the parallels between sports gaming and crypto when it comes to regulation. But I thought of another parallel: advertising. I remember a few years ago we just saw everywhere, DraftKings and their competitors. The ads were everywhere. This year we've seen the same thing in crypto. We're seeing companies buy the Miami Heat arena. FTX has put its logo on every umpire, and then Crypto.com, who no one had heard of, is dropping 50 million. But I'd like you to tell us, candidly, since your industry has seen this before, is this money well spent? Do you think these companies are being smart in throwing tens of millions of dollars around like this, or do you think it's a mistake?
I think that there's different purposes, and without understanding more of the strategy behind it, it's hard for me to say. For example, there's a difference between I'm trying to optimize my marketing dollars purely for response versus I'm trying to embed myself with key constituencies that help me, navigate regulators and help me matter to other stakeholders that, might be helpful on the way, and legitimize the brand and just different things like that that, um, without totally understanding the strategy behind it, it's hard for me to say like good or bad decisions. But I think that it makes sense that one, there's competition, right? And so there's going to be more advertising and funding is coming into these companies. A lot of them are making a lot of money. And then secondly, I think that there is, because of the regulatory backdrop, a desire to, create more legitimacy, to be something associated with mainstream America, which, having connections to sports and other things do that. So I think that it's probably a little bit of both, and if that's the case, then I think there's probably some good decisions being made and probably some that they'll regret. And just like we did, you have to kind of try different things to figure out what works and what doesn't.
Well, and I would piggyback off that by asking, more directly, it worked for you guys, right? At least in terms of instant brand awareness, recognition, when you guys and your competitor at the time, FanDuel, were kind of flooding the airwaves with ads, live games, radio, podcasts. It at least worked in that it made you guys a household name. And it seems to me that that's what the crypto exchanges are going for, even to the extent of, offering deals at first, just like you guys offered promo codes. But what's hard for me to imagine, and I've asked Sam Bankman-Fried, I know you know him, the FTX CEO, about this. It's hard for me to picture a sports fan who isn't in crypto, goes to a game, sees the FTX logo, and says, yeah, I've been thinking about buying some Bitcoin. And then they go home and they sign up for FTX and buy some crypto on it.
Well, maybe. I mean, but maybe it's somebody that's into crypto and is using a competitor. So, there's different reasons. But like I said, there's also just the notion of if there's going to be, two or three or four or five or whatever the number is, big brands in the space of, exchanges specifically, and you want to make sure you're one of them. The analogy you made to us and FanDuel is a good one, I think. So, like you said, Sam, smart guy. I'm sure that he knows what he's doing, and it's not to say that there won't be anything that he won't say, hey, like now that the data's in, I probably should have done this and not that. Of course, I mean, every company goes through that. But I think strategically, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, Jason, I'd like to ask you, as you sort of navigate these very complicated environments of crypto and sports, who do you meet who inspires you? I mean, who do you think, which projects or people do you look to sort of navigate the future? I know you're a Boston-based company. You got some, very important crypto companies in Boston like Circle and so on. So either in your hometown or beyond, name a couple people or companies that you look to for inspiration.
Yeah, there are a lot of really great companies in Boston. I don't want to, pick one or the other, but there's some good ones here. I think a great one is FTX, just who we were talking about. I mean, what they built, what Sam's built in such a short period of time is remarkable. And this desire to just continue to, grow, continue to find new ways to do it, to be smart about how he's handling his approach to, embracing regulators and spending real time there. I think is for such a young company and a young entrepreneur, it's really impressive. And like I said, I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't get it, but I think that what he's doing at a strategic level makes a lot of sense to me, and I think the overall approach is going to work. So. He's a great one. I also think Brian Armstrong at Coinbase, and they've really just been pioneers. And I know they get critiqued for a lot of things, and I get that, but people don't give them enough credit that they were by far more than anyone the largest force in creating the industry in the United States. So they deserve a lot of credit for that, and they've done a lot of really interesting things to bring, more mainstream people in. So that's another organization, another person that I've never met Brian. I've met Sam many times, but I've never met Brian. But I'm very, I think seems like he's a very impressive guy and certainly an impressive
How
company.
about same question in the sports realm? Athletes or general managers who you think are kind of crypto visionaries?
Well, I think Tom Brady really gets it now. He's somebody that, he's still playing football. He's obviously, got a lot. He's spending time on there. But I think when he's done with that, I could see him just because he's somebody that spends so much time studying and just, watching film. And I could see him just immersing himself even deeper in the space. You mentioned Spencer Dinwiddie earlier, really, really early, kind of, into the space. Just I was having conversations with Spencer about crypto before any other athletes that I knew of were talking about it. Um, so those are a couple that jump to mind, and obviously there's others that have gotten involved. I don't want to go through the laundry list, but there's definitely I think a lot of what drives athletes sort of this desire to compete and to be a part of something. I think that really resonates when they experience the crypto community. That really resonates. That really like I think is very similar to what people who are early in the crypto market. They want to compete. They want to be early pioneers and build stuff. And there's a strong sense of like a community and being part of a team, which is great too. And I think that appeals to a lot of athletes.
Totally, totally. This has been great, Jason. Let's wrap this way. I feel like one thing we've been circulating this whole time is, seeing a lot of similarities between your industry and the crypto industry, which is why it makes perfect sense that your company is edging toward this stuff. Let me ask one more question along those lines, and it's more about kind of narratives. As Jeff and I know, having covered crypto for so long, it's often so narrative driven, and even as it's gone so mainstream, I mean, more mainstream than it's ever been, we all know there are still so many people out there who they have this vague sense that crypto is scammy or Bitcoin is used for crime. It's used by hackers. They think NFTs are a scam and a fraud. And I know that you obviously for years have grappled with the same things with kind of the reputation when it comes to fantasy sports and of course sports betting. What do you make of all that? I mean, when you look at crypto, what will cause those opinions that a lot of people still have to change?
Well, I think there's two things. One, and I'll make an analogy to the internet. One is like early on in any new technology, there are going to be people who just right away are like, this appeals to me, I'm into it. And then, most others will be skeptics. Like that's just always how it works. And I think the other analogy I make to the internet is like some of that is fair. Early in the internet days, there weren't a lot of like mainstream ways to consume the internet. If I could log into a bulletin board system or like, go to an FTP site, like, I mean, but like everything eventually centered around World Wide Web and it became like, all the underlying technology was built around that. And then all of a sudden things like video and other, that are more mainstream and easier to consume for the average person came about. Also, from like, reputational standpoint, there is still scams all the time in crypto. There were that also
You're
early
kidding.
in the internet days.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I still get emails from time to time from, prince of some country somewhere that just needs $5,000 and will give me his entire inheritance if I wire it to his Western Union account. So there's that, and I think there's a little bit of intimidation that comes with that. The norms around, as well as the third-party tools for protecting people from those things are not there yet. And on that note, I'll close with saying the other thing I think that's fascinating about this, and it relates to that last point I was making, is in some ways the types of things I'm describing to become mainstream fly directly in the face of decentralization. If you don't have some sort of centralized control, it's hard to protect people from themselves. And I do think there's a lot of people that are going to be intimidated to say, I can accidentally type in a wrong address and send my $10,000 NFT to somebody and I'm never getting it again. And there's no middleman in between that's stopping and making sure that I'm protected for that. Like the person who calls me 5 times to make sure the wire instructions haven't changed before they actually process the wire. Like there's none of that. And you need some sort of centralization to manage that. So it'll be really fascinating to see is, and I know the purists won't like this, but does there need to be some element of centralization that comes in that allows for some of the things that have to happen to make blockchain technology be more applicable to mainstream use cases. When and how does that happen, and how does that sort of affect the existing, purists that believe that anything other than 100% decentralization is a complete, is scoffing in the face of what we're doing in the first place. So I'm going to be interested to watch that. I think much like the early days of mentioning the internet, I don't actually think there's yet something that everybody, whether that's a World Wide Web website that you can watch video on. There's not. We're so early, right? We are like early '90s, late '80s internet right now still, and remember that's still 10 years into the internet, 15 years in the internet. That's not like beginning. There is still so much time and so many things that need to evolve. And it's going to be exciting to watch. And I think a lot of the people that are skeptics, they should be now in some ways, because it hasn't proven itself yet. But I see so many commonalities with other technologies that my money's on it becoming a big thing and having an effect in ways that people will not even appreciate or understand today, but absolutely will affect their lives down the road.
It's a great answer. We feel the same way. And of course, the, utopian idealizing of decentralization is a big topic in itself, topic for another day. But Jason, thanks so much for joining us. We'll have to help us get your friend Tom Brady on the GM podcast next.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys. Great seeing you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason.